This is Shoots and Scores Hockey Talk, where we talk everything hockey. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
I'm Chris.
All right, guys, let's go. Now, tonight, we're going to get into the trade deadline day that happened on Friday, and it's the outlook for some of the teams. And, of course, also the Rantanen trade and how none of us thought that that was going to happen. But we're going to start off with trade deadline day. So our first topic is Friday, March the 7th, this past Friday, was trade deadline day, guys. I will admit more happened than what I thought was going to happen. I wasn't expecting all those trades. Now, minus the Rantanen trade, Mike, because we're going to talk about this later. Name us some winners from trade deadline day. What do you think?
Okay, well, if we're not talking specifically about that, I guess I got to leave Dallas off that list because I would say Dallas undoubtedly. I think the Florida Panthers, and not so more just what they did on deadline day, like getting Marchand is big for them, but getting Seth Jones in the days prior to really is going to come in handy, especially now that we see that Aaron Ekblad is going to miss some time.
Right.
So for the other winners on trade deadline day, I felt Colorado did really well to make the moves that they needed to make by getting Nelson and Charlie Coyle. So I think that solidifies their top three line centermen as far as the positioning goes. So I think Colorado did really well in that regard as well. Other trade deadline winners, those were the two big. Well, with Dallas, I would say those were the big ones. So there was a lot of teams that really didn't do much of anything, and there are some teams that should have done more. But as far as winners, those would be the three teams that I would say were the winners of trade deadline day.
Chris, you want to add anything to Mike's analysis of the situation?
Yeah, you got two of them right, for sure. The right definition of trade winners is, did you fill your holes? You're perceived, what do we lack? What do we need for a run? First one is Colorado. If you guys recall looking at particularly their forward roster in November, their third and fourth line was littered with who is that and where did he come from? It was pretty bad. Obviously, they decided, with Rantanen, can't afford to sign him and then fill out the roster. They moved on with him, and then they brought in all these players. And now you look at their 3-4 lines, you're like, no, they now have built some depth. So Colorado won. My other one is the Toronto Maple Leafs, just because they decided that they needed a third line center. They needed more size on defense, and they did it. Right? They made those moves. You could question how good those guys are and what they're going to make a difference for them or not, but I see that's a win for them. Florida is a very close win because 100% when they lost Montour, they needed a right shot defenseman. They got that in Seth Jones. That was a hole they needed to plug. Marchand, to me, seemed to be more of, hey, we can do this, let's do it, but I didn't see a need on that roster. They didn't need Marchand on that team, so that was an extra one. For Dallas, did they get the best player in the trade deadline? Yes. Did they really need Rantanen with that forward group? No. Again, to me, it's excessive. Their hole was on defense. They have holes on defense, and I'm sure they were on Seth Jones. Florida got him, but to me, that was their biggest need. But yeah, they still got the best player.
Okay, fair enough, guys. So I'm going to start with our second topic for tonight, and that is, Chris, can you tell us about some losers from trade deadline day? What do you think? Who really blew it here? Who really blew it?
Going in the same definition, who's the top team in the West by points? And you guys can answer.
Oh, well, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg. And who's the top team in the East?
Washington.
Those are the two losers in my mind. First, let's talk about Winnipeg. I know Winnipeg has an issue. A lot of players with no trade clauses, no movement clauses, rejecting to go there. But Cheveldayoff has known they needed a second line center since July 1st, right? His team is doing very well, and not able to plug that hole, to me, is is a big loss. The two guys they got, Luke Shan, I won't even talk about Luke Shan, and the other guy, they already have size, they already have toughness. They just added on some extra, maybe in case of injuries. But to me, they should have tried to find a way to find that second line center. The Washington Capitals, maybe management believes that yes, their offense and goaltending is not sustainable, and they're not willing to move any prospects or players to push the needle. But a second round pick for whatever his name is again, I can't think of it, and Antonio, somebody, whoever he is, that doesn't move the needle. I don't know what that was all about. But to me, those two teams, you got. Then they might also say chemistry. We got great chemistry. Over the years, you see teams move and bring in good players. That doesn't hurt chemistry. You bring in good players, they'll it increases their chances of Stanley Cup. And I think those two teams really probably should have done a lot more.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here quickly. I mean, hey, those two teams are the top teams in the East and Western Conference. Why break it? Why break what's working? If it's not broken, why change it?
The best example I can bring up, of course, because I'm a Carolina Hurricane fan, is 2006. Right? We were the top of the league. We were beating everybody, and they went and got Doug Weight. Right?
Right, and that put them over the top, right?
And that put it over the top. And then we lost Eric Cole, and they went and got Mark Recchi. Right? So yes, when you're Johnny Rutherford even said afterwards, when your team is competing well, add. Right? Just add. I don't agree. So I think Winnipeg might have been handcuffed. I know they're in Brock Nelson. Obviously, he might have decided, I don't want to go there. Who knows what the packages were. But Washington, yeah. Maybe they're smarter than we think, and they realize they're going to come down to earth at some point, and they didn't want to do it. But hard to say.
I know a lot of players don't want to play in Winnipeg. It's like the coldest place to play in North America. So, but anyway, in a small market too. Mike, what do you think? Do you agree with anything that Chris said? And do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, I do agree in the fact that I do think that Washington and Winnipeg should have done a little more to add to the roster, like you said, with some of the names that were available. Not sure and like you said as well, not sure they wanted to mess with the chemistry that they've currently got going. But I always think that, you know what, if you think you have a legitimate chance to win, you should do something to give yourself a better chance to win. And Washington and Winnipeg didn't. They probably should have. I mean, we'll see come playoff time whether we're right or wrong on that. As far as some other losers, and I don't want to throw Carolina under the bus. That's a tough pill to swallow with the guys they gave up to what they actually got. And I'm not saying it's not a good move for the future. However, the players that ended up leaving are definitely better than Stankoven. So it's really, I don't know. As a Carolina fan, if I was a Carolina fan, I wouldn't be happy with what they did in order to win this year. So, and to top off one other team that I thought really kind of, didn't do much of anything and that should have, there's a couple, but the New Jersey Devils, they lost, a couple of their big players there, Hamilton and Jack Hughes, and they didn't do anything to replace them. I think they're maybe just hoping they're back for the playoffs, but if they're not, then they're going to have a hard time this year as well. And the Detroit Red Wings, are they trying to make the playoffs, or are they not trying to make the playoffs?
It looks like they're trying to.
Geyser plan. Worst plan in hockey.
That's the thing. Like, where are they at? Like, they didn't make any moves at all,
Nope.
to my knowledge. And I thought if they were planning to do something to get in, and they didn't, or they just thought the prices were too high. I get it. And sorry to drag it on, but Edmonton, I thought they should have addressed maybe the goaltending issue, and they didn't. maybe getting a more solid backup than Pickard. But it is what it is. They could have probably improved the defense a little bit more. I mean, they did get Jake Wallman, who's more of an offensive guy than I think they more needed a defensive defenseman. But we'll see what happens come playoff time, whether their decisions were right or wrong as well.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, we've got that all on record. We'll see if you guys and myself, if we're close, right, wrong, we'll see what happens. But before we move on, I just want to ask, what do you guys think about the Ottawa Senators and what they did?
What did they do?
Pierre Dorion.
I don't know. Ottawa, like, it looks like they're gonna get in the way it's standing, but I mean they still got the Rangers breathing down their neck too. So not sure. Like the same as Detroit. Like Detroit's right on the cusp of getting in too, and they didn't do anything either. So. Hey.
I think the Buffalo deal with Ottawa, that's what's the old saying, rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
No, unless those guys are real idiots in the locker room, that's not really moving the needle. Zetterlund came out of Norway. So I'm not sure why San Jose moved off him. It's only his second year in the league, and he's 24 or 25. And why would Ottawa be interested in him, right? It's yeah. So some teams, they do trades, and you just don't know if they're just doing it for the sake of doing it, right? It's hard
the reason why I asked is because I like Ottawa. I wanted them to make it into the playoffs this year, and I thought maybe they should have done a little more. And I just kind of wondered what you guys have thought. And maybe it's tough to make people, get players to go to Ottawa. I have no idea, but anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter. We'll go on to. Oh no, go ahead, Mike.
I thought the Zetterlund move was just kind of to get some secondary scoring in there because, I mean, he has had a decent year in San Jose. So I think he'll be helpful for the team. But, Ottawa's, if they make the playoffs, they're gone in the first round, I think. So they probably just didn't want to do too much either as well. Like Bagel said, if they don't think that they're going to go anywhere, it's like loading up for them and getting eliminated in the first round just doesn't make sense, for the future.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to the third topic, and that is, of course, the Rantanen trade. I want to get a little more in depth here. Now, listen to me, guys. I'm going to put something on the table. You can call me crazy after. And I see you shaking your head, so you already know. But did everyone win with the Rantanen trade? Now, just hear me out before you jump down my throat here. The Avalanche filled some holes on their team, and they got rid of the best player in the trade. And that probably wouldn't have happened if they had kept Rantanen. The Hurricanes did get Stankoven. He's a 22-year-old center who's 30 points in 60 games. Yeah, okay, not great maybe. But for the future, it could be a much better fit. I mean, we'll see. And of course, Dallas, they did get the best player in the trade. So it's kind of hard to argue that they did poorly. Chris, what do you think? Am I gone totally insane or what?
Again, you got to break it up for the present or for the future. For the present, yes, Dallas, Colorado, making out like bandits. Carolina, probably looking for, again, in a vacuum, this was not Carolina's year. And the move for Rantanen wasn't for a rental, right? For people who think, they traded Natchez for a rental, no. That's why when they couldn't sign him, they moved him, right?
Right.
But in a vacuum, if you look at Natchez, Drury, a second and a fourth for Stankoven, 2 firsts, 2 thirds, and Taylor Hall, in a vacuum, Carolina did pretty good, asset-wise. But again, they're in the future. Carolina is not going to use those picks in 2026 and 2028 first rounds for Dallas, right? They're going to use that to acquire talent. The summer is going to be big for them, for sure. Like I mentioned before, Nikishkin, Morrow, Nadeau, they're going to go big hunting because they got $37 million in cap space and they only need 2 forwards and a goalie. Carolina is going to look like a contender next year, and I think it was always about next year. And that's the reason why they moved Rantanen. Brind'Amour came out and pretty much said what we all thought. Rantanen said, "There's only 4 teams I'm interested in playing for, and you're not one of them." Right? That's why he was traded for deadline day.
Tough pill to swallow sometimes. Mike, what do you think? Am I crazy?
I think, when you look at the big picture, every team did well in this trade. Like Dallas obviously is, a clear top contender for the cup. And they were before this trade. So getting Rantanen was just, the icing on the cake. And it's a great trade for them. The 2 draft picks that they traded away are going to be later picks. Carolina, like Chris said, probably going to use those as trade bait. Um, they basically gave up Stankoven for Rantanen, and everybody and their dog would do that trade every day of the week. So, Dallas is a winner in that regard. Carolina, yes, the picks they got. My only concern with the return they got is Stankoven's a smaller guy, and
He
he
is, yeah.
really well last year, and this year he's had a hard time. So, and we all know that sometimes the second year is always the toughest one for some of these guys. So we're going to have to kind of see what happens as far as his production goes moving forward. Maybe he's going to get a better opportunity in Carolina, because in Dallas they roll three lines pretty evenly. So he's not getting top power play. He's getting second line power play. He's probably going to get some top line power play time when he's in Carolina. So, we'll see what happens there. Like I said, my only concern is he's a smaller player, and it's not a big man's game necessarily anymore, but it's all about who you can gel with on your lines. So, and Colorado, I mean, they made it well. I mean, the cap space that they cleared up enabled them to go get some other pieces that they needed. Plus, they got Netchkash as part of their return for Rantanen. So, Colorado is another team that I think is a winner for this year. So, Dallas, Colorado this year, Carolina more so for the future. And another thing, too, as part of this, I think another team that could be one of the losers in this whole Rantanen trade could be your Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Considering they wanted to flip Marner for him, and I don't know how well that's going to go as far as negotiating with Marner there this offseason.
I was going to say that's one thing that could hurt, not keeping Rantanen and then letting Toronto sign Rantanen as a free agent in summer, freeing up Marner for everyone else. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out this summer.
It sucks because, as far as I'm concerned, Marner is what makes the whole Maple Leaf team go. But anyway, you could very well be right. We'll have to wait and see. Wouldn't surprise me, though. I want to move along here onto our 4th topic tonight. We're going to get away from trade deadline day. I want to talk about Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. Obviously, Chris's favorite topic, the Washington Capitals. Now, but Ovechkin needs 9 more goals, and he has 18 games to break Gretzky's record. That's awesome. I hope he pulls it off. Now, in an interview with Russian media outlet, Ovechkin mentioned that he would not want to continue his career in the NHL past his current contract, which ends next year, 2026. He said he would like to go back to Moscow Dynamo, where it all started. And I just want to know, guys, do you think that Ovechkin should stay in the NHL and get as many goals as possible to separate himself between himself and Wayne Gretzky? Perhaps trying to reach the 1,000 goals for his career, or is that even possible? Mike, what do you say about all that?
Well, the thing is a lot of these Russian players tend to want to finish their career back home. So I'm not overly surprised with that being talked about. I foresee a lot of these guys doing that. So, I mean, some already have. But I see Ovechkin going back, probably playing a year over there. I see Malkin doing the same thing.
Malkin, yep.
So, I think it's just their way of, wanting to go back home and play in front of, their fans back home again. So, I mean, they came over here, they won some Stanley Cups. They made their money. So going back home to play for a year, I'm not shocked by that at all.
Chris, your
Yeah.
favorite topic, the Washington Capitals. What do you think?
Oh yeah, watch the Capitals. Um, no, yeah, he's if he's saying that now, this was already pre-planned for him to leave. And if he ends up with 930, 940, 950, it's going to be decades before anybody might even come close to that, depending on changes in how the NHL plays and their style and stuff. So his records, well, we all thought Wayne's was going to be safe. I'm assuming
Yep.
his is going to be safe for a long time too. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I wish he would stay, but I wonder if once he does break the record, if his goal scoring is going to drop off considerably. He's getting older. Father time, it catches up to everybody. I mean, it caught up to Tom Brady as well, right? Catches up to everyone eventually, but
Well, he's clearly pushing hard this year to
Yes.
try to break that record this
oh
year.
yeah,
So, you
absolutely.
know, but I mean, if he's motivated next year, he should still be able to put up decent numbers next year, whether he's broken the record or not. So, but he's clearly motivated to do it this year.
All right, well, let's go on to our fifth and final topic for tonight. Now, this is a bit long, guys, so just bear with me. Now, this is about Aaron Ekblad and the Florida Panthers because on Monday, March the 10th, Ekblad was suspended for 20 games by the NHL for a PED violation, performance enhancing drugs. Now, here's a quote from Ekblad. Now, this is quote, ultimately, I made a mistake by taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking with proper medical and team personnel. I have let my teammates, the Panthers organization, and our great fans down. For that, I am truly sorry. I have accepted responsibility for my mistake and will be fully prepared to return to my team when my suspension is over. I have learned a hard lesson and cannot wait to be back with my teammates, unquote. And the Panthers have 18 games left, and he's suspended for 20. So, guys, the question I want to ask you is this suspension length proper for the crime? Now, Chris, let's start with you.
If you compare it with other sports, no, it's not. Baseball, you lose I think it's 81 the first time, and then maybe a full year the second time, and then out of the league the third time. So there's more punishment on their side for sure. Um, in hockey, yeah, that this seems like the standard. I love those statements that come out afterwards, right? Um, about, oh, we didn't know, I took something, wasn't aware. They have doctors, they have all these guys, and they have I know the list is crazy, but they have a list of stuff that you're not supposed to take. And we continue to see this over and over again. And it is kind of interesting. Like, is he taking stuff outside of the hockey team? Like what? But for punishments, yeah, that to me that's fine, especially if it truly is a oops, and he hasn't been taking steroids or something, for years or whatever it might be.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Chris on this. I mean, different sports have different penalties when it comes to this. Hockey's not really a sport that's known to have these type of issues, so that's quite possibly why the suspension lengths aren't as long, because it's not something that's common. It's more common in baseball, like you see, and more so in the past than now. Now that the penalties have increased so much, uh, you see less players doing it. I mean, for baseball, like Robinson Cano, I think he got hit with the longest one ever. I think he was suspended for pretty much the whole season. So, um, but maybe it's just a mistake. But like Chris said, these teams have doctors. Like, before any player takes anything at all, they should be like, this should be going through the team beforehand. But who knows? It's hard to say what some of these guys do, and they might just think, okay, you know what, whatever, it's just an over the counter thing or whatever. Um, and that's maybe what it was. Who knows? But they didn't specifically say what the substance was, but it's
You
kind of
know,
yeah, it's going to hurt Florida a little bit down the stretch, but it makes that acquisition of Seth Jones all that much more important to fill that void. So
I'm kind of split on this because, in one way, these players are managed beyond belief. Like, this is way different than what it was in the 1970s when the
mhm.
guys were drinking beer and smoking between periods, right? I mean, that doesn't happen anymore. You're not just home going through your medicine cabinet. Oh, let's try and take this and see if this will cure my whatever. Like, that's just not happening with these guys. I mean, they're given a strict regimen. Like, take this, you're allowed to take, you can't do this. I mean, there's no way you're just throwing stuff up in the air and showing your friends how how many pills you can swallow. I mean, I just can't see it. And the other thing is, you could literally almost kill a player out there, and you're not going to get 20 games unless you're a repeat offender massively, a massive repeat offender. I mean, you won't get 20 games. So I find it a bit hypocritical. I find the
Yeah,
whole thing a bit hypocritical.
the NHL is pretty light on violent acts on the ice. It probably needs to definitely step up on that. Um, like I said, I know there is a lot of over-the-counter drugs in our drugstores that are banned, right? But for him, he didn't say he was sick. He said he was taking something to deal with an injury. That
Yes,
100% should be on the Florida medical team and not him, right?
right.
So to me, that yeah. When you hear some guys been suspended saying, "Oh, I had a cold and I got some cold FX or something," they're like, "Oh nope, one of the ingredients is on the ban list," right? They're like, "Oops." Um, but I don't think we ever get the full truths in a lot of these unless he goes on some kind of podcast, like he shoots, he scores, hockey talk, and maybe he knows what happened. But that's about
Well, you should get your people to give them a call and get them to come on. And we'll talk to them.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was my rant about that. I just found that 20 games, yeah, that's a lot, but man, you can almost kill someone. You won't get 20 games. Like, you got to really, you have to be a super repeat offender. And even then, it may not happen. So,
Hmm.
all right. Well, enough of that. Let's go on to the Hockey Profits segment where you guys are both the Hockey Profits. At least that's what I'm saying. So, I have my timer all ready. We have 6 questions here, 3 for each one of you. We're going to start off with Chris. Are you gentlemen ready for the Hockey Profit segment?
Ready?
All set.
Okay, number 1, Chris. Hot or not, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are 5-4-1 in their last 10, but they absolutely smoked the Rangers on Sunday, 7-3, after the Rangers came back and tied it. Hot or not?
Hot. Yeah.
Hot?
I'm a big fan of Zach Werenski. Um, always been very talented, but he had his shoulders that just wouldn't stay intact for the last 4 or 5 years. But when healthy, he produced, and this year he's healthy.
Yep.
Uh, Marchenko stepped up. Fantilli has stepped up since Monahan got hurt, and him and Marchenko and I think Vorkanov are playing together. Um, that's just very good chemistry, and they're scoring a ton of goals. They are scoring a lot of goals,
Yep. Just
particularly
ask the Rangers.
in power play. They got a lot of holes, but right now they're outscoring them. And it'd be nice to see Columbus, get in there, especially former GM Carolina sitting there. It'd be good to see them do well. But with all the Johnny Gaudreau stuff and everything, yeah, I think Columbus getting the playoffs would be a feel good story of the year.
Agreed. All right, number 2, Mike. The Rangers have 68 points. Now, let's say the Rangers do make the playoffs, okay? What team would they replace? The Devils have 74, Ottawa has 71, Columbus has 70.
Uh, that's tough. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the Devils. I think the Devils are still going to squeak themselves in, even though I think they're going to slide a little bit. I think that one of those teams that could get knocked out. I mean, like Chris said, Columbus has just been hot and they've been scoring goals. I think Ottawa might be the team because the Ottawa is streaky. They go on these hot streaks where they'll win a few games in a row, and then they'll go on these streaks where they lose 3 or 4 in a row. So I think if the Rangers are to catch any of them, it's probably going to be Ottawa.
Okay, fair enough. Number 3, Chris. Besides Rantanen, Is Brad Marchand the big winner from trade deadline day? I mean, going to a cup contender, getting out of Boston. What do you think? Is he the big winner?
Probably like Rantanen. I don't think he was expecting to get moved. I think he wanted to stay. I heard some numbers were thrown around today, like $700,000 a part or whatever it might be. And I think as soon as he realized they weren't going to come together, he could be traded. Going to Florida for him, yes, that's for him personally to go for a Stanley Cup. Yeah, it's a big win for Marchand.
All right, number 4, Mike, is the second line center position a problem for the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, I think Brock Nelson would have been a great fit for them, but they weren't willing to give up the assets, I guess, that Colorado was. And he was the best second line center basically on the market. And I think he could have filled a big hole there in Winnipeg. And instead, he went to some competition, which,
Yep.
If he had gone to the Eastern Conference, Winnipeg might not worry too much about it. But whereas he went to the West and could be one of the teams that Winnipeg's facing in the playoffs, it could be a
Right.
problem. So yeah, they should have ponied up for Brock Nelson in this, and he was really, when you're looking at the centermen that were available, he was really the only legit second line center that was moved. The rest of the centers that got moved were pretty much third line players. So.
All right, number 5, Chris. The Hurricanes play Tampa Bay tonight on Tuesday night, and I believe they've won 4 in a row. Are the Hurricanes going to make it 5 in a row tonight, Chris? What do you think?
I hope so. It's Tampa Bay. Can't stand Tampa Bay either. Yeah, I think so. That they played very well against Winnipeg.
Yeah, they did.
I think that was more the whole Rantanen circus finally gone, and as some of the guys came out, we now know who's going to go to war with us in this room, and we're ready to compete again. Canes still play hard, right? If you don't give your max effort, you're going to get beaten by the Canes.
That's right. They're going to give their max effort, so
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Yeah,
All right.
hard too.
All right, and finally, number 6, and I'm sure the both of you gentlemen will be glad when this is all over with. Mike, are the Flyers officially out of the playoff hunt?
They've been out of the playoff hunt for a little while. Yes, they are. There's no chance of them making the playoffs this year.
When was game 1 of the season? When was that? When was game 1 of the season? I think they were officially eliminated then.
They were, in my book, they were eliminated before the season started.
Okay,
I did not have them making the playoffs this year at all.
And Mike actually said that on the show. He did say that at the very beginning of the season. So I'll
be honest with you, they're in the exact spot that I thought they would be in. Like I told Whitey, last year they were close, and this year they were going to drop a little bit more. So, and sure enough, that's what happened. So.
But they got 3 first-round picks this year, right? 3 first-rounders. The future's bright in 2030. The future.
The Flyers are known to take third-line centers with their first-round picks, which does not equate to success in my book. So,
but Mike,
we'll see what they do with these ones.
How many third lines do the Flyers want to have, though? If they take third-line centers, what do they want? 4 third lines?
They wanted 4. I mean, they took Lawton in the first round. They took Morgan Frost in the first round. I mean, there's probably more that I can't think of right offhand, but those 2. I mean, there's always hope that Morgan Frost can be a second line center. If he is, he's a second line center on a weak team. He should not be any stronger team second line center, in my opinion. So. And they picked Luchenko this year. So let's hope that he's a legitimate second line center, hopefully first line center. We'll have to wait and see when it comes to that. But I like the 3 first-round picks going into the offseason, but I'm always on the fence with how the Flyers use their first-round picks because they always tend to pick the same style of player, a hardworking, gritty player. They don't go for high-end skill. The exception was Mitchkov, and he basically fell in their lap. They'd have been crazy not to pick him. So Yeah,
Maybe that changes with Danielle Briere.
we'll see. We'll see. Let's hope.
Okay, gentlemen, we're a little long on the tooth tonight, but we're not going to go until I ask you both. Is there anything else you wanted to add to tonight's discussion? Because I think it's important. I always ask a certain narrow set of questions, and maybe you wanted to expand somewhere else. Chris, did you have anything else you wanted to add tonight?
Yeah, one thing I popped in my mind with Mike talking about the Devils. I think, in my opinion, I think the Devils realized with the injuries they ran into it probably wasn't their year. They had, you know,
Right.
I'm not aware of them losing anybody next year, so they're pretty much going to have this team. And this team was a Stanley Cup contender um, before the injuries now kicked in, and I assume they're just going to say, you know what, next year we'll be back, and I'm sure they'll be one of the favorites.
Right. Because, I mean, they started out the year really well. I mean, they were at the top of the conference.
Yeah.
And they've slid.
But you can't replace Jack Hughes.
No, well, that's true.
That's yeah.
That's true. Mike, anything else you wanted to add?
Um, the Vancouver Canucks. What are they doing? Like it looks like they
Jimmy
just
Rutherford.
they
Trust in Jimmy.
basically. I think they've given up on the season. They did nothing at the deadline. I mean, they're tied with Calgary basically. They could get in. Like Calgary made some moves to get in, nothing huge, but they did get they got Frost and Farabee to add to their depth. But Vancouver literally did nothing to help their team. The JT Miller trade was that doesn't help them. Um, so I think they're just gonna go with what they've got. Obviously now they are, and then in the off season see what they can do. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the way that team played last year compared to this year, and it's basically the same team. It's a little surprising. I mean, with the exception of the goaltending, because Demko was hurt, but then again, he was hurt last year as well. So, aside from that, I mean, what happened there? There's got to be something going on. And I know that they had the whole feud between Miller and Pedersen, but I think it's done more to that locker room than maybe we know, because there's no way that the team should play like it did last year to what it's done this year, in my opinion.
It's really strange. I think that whole feud supposedly between, well, not supposedly, but in the locker room in Vancouver, I thought, oh, it's just the media hyping this up. It's not really that big of a deal. These guys will settle their differences, right? They're professionals. You know, man, was I ever dead wrong? I was so wrong. It was crazy. And these guys really wanted to kill each other, it seems like holy jumpins.
And if half the locker room is Pedersen and half the locker room is JT Miller,
Yeah.
and your coach is going to be a JT Miller fan,
Right, yes.
I'm not sure if they made the right decision here going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, it affected both of their performances this year, because neither one of them were playing at the level that they were at last year, which overall affected the whole team's performance. The only player that's played to the level they were at last year is Quinn Hughes. Besser's had a down year. They brought in Dabrowski, hasn't had a great year. So, I mean, none of their guys that they've got other than Quinn Hughes has played as good or better than what they did last year. So, um, and that's the recipe right there for missing the playoffs. So, and it looks like that's what's going to happen, because I think Calgary seems a little more motivated.
I would just add DeBrusque's never had a good year. He's always the same guy
I
year.
agree 100%.
Every year they think he's going to become a superstar.
Yeah. Every team that's had him, he's going to score 30, 35, 40 goals.
There's a game or two you watch him play and you're like, wow, this guy can skate, he can shoot, he plays hard, and then he'll go 10 games and like, what is this? And nothing's changed, right? He is what he is.
Yeah.
We got to stop thinking something's going to change.
Well, I want to imitate, before we go, I want to imitate a little bit of Brad Marchand, okay? This is trade deadline day. Wow, shit, that sucks. Oh, this is not so bad after all. Wow, I can't believe this just happened. Maybe this is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Marchand.
I think he might where he goes in the summertime. That's
yeah.
Bridge that might be burned, and Is it going to be, well, Pittsburgh shouldn't. Colorado, right? These are the teams that everyone thought the Nova Scotia boys getting back together somehow. We'll
Well,
see.
that was Mike and I talking about that a few times.
Uh,
But I mean, it would have been nice, but obviously it wasn't going to happen. It probably was not going to happen, but the media was talking about it, so we brought it up. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to leave it there for tonight. We've gone quite a bit over our normal time, but hey, it was a good discussion, guys. So, like, share, subscribe, and let us know in the comments section where we went wrong, because I'm sure we went wrong somewhere. Oh, and before we do go, just to let you know, the Shoots and Scores Hockey Talk is also available on your favorite podcast site. So I'll put a link in with the show notes. So we'll talk to you next week, everybody. Later.
Later.
Bye.